The Appalachian Trail's dark secrets, 4 horror stories you can't ignore. Welcome to DTC, the Place of the Brave, where we delve into the eerie and unsettling tales that haunt the Appalachian Trail. Stretching over 2,000 miles through the dense, mist-shrouded forests of the eastern United States, this iconic trail has witnessed more than just hikers. It's seen the strange, the inexplicable, and the downright terrifying. Join us as we explore 4 chilling Appalachian Trail horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. From disappearances to ghostly encounters, these are the stories that the woods have whispered for generations. Stay tuned, if you dare. Story 1, The Mysterious Lantern in the Forest. I've been patrolling the Appalachian Trail for 2 years now. The job is a mix of solitude and serenity, where the beauty of the forest often calms the mind. But tonight was different. I was deep into my rounds when something caught my eye, a faint, flickering light far in the distance through the thick woods. At first I thought it was just my tired eyes playing tricks on me. After all, the trail was quiet, the night eerily still, except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. But there it was again, the light, a soft, almost imperceptible glow moving deeper into the forest. I've worked this job long enough to know that this isn't normal. No one hikes out here this late at night, especially not so far into the woods. The trail is remote, far from civilization, and people who stray off the path rarely make it back. My heart started to pound in my chest, a feeling of unease slowly creeping in. There was no explanation for the light, no reason for anyone to be out here. Yet the light kept flickering, moving as if beckoning me to follow. And despite every logical instinct telling me to turn around, my curiosity got the better of me. I moved closer, trying to stay hidden, crouching low to avoid being seen. The light wasn't just a glow from a campfire or a flash from a lantern. It was something else. Something wrong. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in around me, the trees almost seeming to lean closer as I made my way through the dense underbrush. As I followed the light, it led me deeper into the woods. The eerie flicker of the lantern grew stronger, but no matter how much I moved, the light never seemed to get closer. It was as though it was just out of reach, always a few steps ahead of me, tempting me to keep moving. And that's when I saw it, a rusted lantern hanging from a tree branch. It swayed slightly in the breeze, the flame inside flickering weakly, but no one was around. It was abandoned. My breath caught in my throat. The lantern was old, really old. The metal was rusted and cracked, and the glass was fogged over with years of grime. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, yet there it hung, as though someone had just placed it there moments ago. I looked around, trying to make sense of it. Was this some kind of prank? But the forest was completely silent. Too silent. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to get out of there as fast as I could. But I wasn't about to leave without understanding what was going on. With trembling hands, I reached up and snuffed out the lantern's flame. The glow instantly faded into the darkness, and for a moment, everything was still. The silence was deafening. But then, I saw something, a flash, just a brief, faint light, flickering in the distance. I froze, my blood turning cold. Was it the lantern? It couldn't be. I had put it out. But the light continued to appear, now more sporadic and erratic, like some sort of signal coming from deeper in the woods. I tried to brush it off as my mind playing tricks on me, the fatigue and isolation taking their toll. But that night and the nights that followed were never the same. Every time I walked the trail after that, I'd catch glimpses of the light, flashes of it, so brief I couldn't be sure if I was imagining it. But I wasn't. The light was real. Some nights it would appear right in front of me, flickering like a warning, and I could almost feel it watching me, waiting for me to approach. And every time I did, I'd find nothing, just empty trees, silent under the weight of the night. Other nights I'd hear something else, faint footsteps behind me, a rustle of leaves when no one was there, a whisper in the wind that sounded far too clear to be natural. It wasn't long before I began to hear the stories, local legends, things I'd never believed before. They spoke of the lost lantern, a curse that haunted the Appalachian Trail. According to the old-timers, the lantern was placed there long ago by a person who had gone missing in the woods, someone who had never been found. The lantern, they said, was a beacon, a marker for those who had strayed too far, who had become lost and had never returned. It wasn't just a light. It was a signal, a lure to guide others into the same fate. They told me of another park ranger who had gone missing after seeing the lantern. His last words before he vanished were, "I followed the light, and now it's following me." I shuddered as I heard the story. Was that what was happening to me? Was I becoming another part of this twisted legend? And so, night after night, the flashes of light continued. No matter how many times I tried to ignore it, to tell myself it was just my mind playing tricks, deep down I knew the truth. The lantern was not just an old relic of the past. It was something much darker, something waiting. One evening, while I was out on patrol, I saw the light again. This time it wasn't flickering. It was steady, glowing brightly from the edge of the trail just ahead of me. As I approached, the light seemed to grow stronger, the glow almost blinding. I could feel a pull, an unnatural compulsion to move toward it, as if something was urging me on. My heart raced, my mind screamed for me to turn back, but my body moved against my will. As I reached the edge of the trees, I saw it. The lantern was there, glowing brightly, but it was no longer hanging from a branch. It was now sitting on the ground, surrounded by a faint, glowing mist. And standing next to it, just outside of the light's reach, was a figure, a person or something that resembled one. It was tall and thin, its face hidden in the shadows, but its eyes were glowing, burning with an otherworldly fire. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling in the cold night air. The figure didn't respond. It only stood there, watching me, unmoving. The lantern beside it flickered once more, casting long, unnatural shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in the mist. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the figure vanished. The lantern's glow dimmed to nothing, leaving me alone in the dark. I ran back to the ranger station that night, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that I couldn't stay there anymore. The light, the lantern, it was no longer just an object. It was a curse, a warning. And whatever was behind it, whatever it wanted, I wasn't sure I could outrun it. All I knew was that I could never walk that trail alone again. From that night on, the flashes of light became more frequent, always just at the edge of my vision, always just out of reach. The light never left, and neither did the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to return. But I never went back, at least not alone. I never told anyone what I saw, what I felt. I couldn't. They would think I was crazy, or worse. But deep inside, I knew the truth. The Appalachian Trail is haunted by something much older, much darker than anyone could ever imagine. And that lantern? It's not just a light. It's a beacon, calling to those who dare to wander too far into the forest. And once it calls you, it doesn't let you go. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave, and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 2. The Figure in the Fog, a terrifying tale from the Appalachian Trail. I was a firefighter, used to the heat of flames and the chaos of life-threatening situations, but nothing had prepared me for the bone-chilling terror I would face that morning. It started like any other hike. I needed a break from the noise of the world, so I decided to venture into the Appalachian Trail before dawn. The fog was thick, so thick that it seemed to swallow up the trail beneath my boots. The trees, usually so imposing, were reduced to shadows. It felt like the forest itself was holding its breath, as if waiting for something to happen. As I moved forward, the eerie silence began to press down on me. I couldn't even hear the chirping of birds or the rustle of leaves. It was just me and the fog, unsettling, suffocating, and cold. I tried to shake off the feeling creeping up my spine. After all, this was the Appalachian Trail, one of the most famous hiking paths in the world. But then, through the fog, I saw it. A figure. A dark shape standing still, unmoving. At first, I thought it was just another hiker. Maybe someone out here for the same reason I was, seeking peace, or perhaps trying to outrun their own demons. I called out to the figure, my voice cutting through the thick fog. No response. I called again, louder this time, but there was only silence. My heart began to race. I took a cautious step forward, my senses on high alert, but the figure didn't move. It was almost as if it was frozen in place, suspended between reality and something else. I squinted, trying to make out its features, but the fog made it impossible. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. There was something off about its stillness, unnatural. Yet I couldn't look away. I took another step forward, but in the blink of an eye, the figure was gone, vanished into the mist without a trace. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. It felt as if the air had thickened around me. I called out once more, hoping to hear a response, but there was nothing. I searched the area, my heart pounding in my chest. Not a sound, not a movement. The fog had swallowed the figure, leaving me in complete isolation. But then, it reappeared. A shadow in the mist. There it was again, standing motionless, as if waiting for me to come closer. I could feel my skin crawling as I hesitated. What was this? A trick of the light? A hallucination? No, this was real. This was something I couldn't explain. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was another hiker who got lost in the fog. Maybe they were too far away to hear me. But deep down, something in my gut told me this was no ordinary hiker. I reached into my pocket, my fingers trembling as I pulled out my phone, but it was useless. No signal. The isolation was suffocating, and the figure in the fog seemed to be watching, waiting for something. I could feel a presence, something ancient and powerful, lurking just out of sight. It wasn't just the fog that was closing in on me now. I was being stalked by something, and I couldn't see it, yet it was always there, just out of reach. Then a scream. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the fog, sending a chill down my spine. My heart skipped a beat as I instinctively started moving toward the sound, my feet taking me further into the abyss. I couldn't stop myself. The scream, so haunting and filled with pain, dragged me forward as though it was calling to me, urging me deeper into the fog. But with every step, I felt more disoriented, more lost. The world around me twisted and bent. The trail I had been following no longer seemed familiar. The trees, the rocks, everything looked the same, indistinguishable. It was as if I had been transported into another world, one where the fog ruled and the land had forgotten time. I tried to call out, but my voice seemed swallowed by the heavy mist. My breath came in shallow gasps as the panic set in. I was lost. No, more than lost. I was being hunted. And the figure in the fog? It was out there, waiting, always a few steps ahead. Every time I thought I had escaped it, it would reappear, always just out of reach, always just behind me. And then I saw it again. This time the figure wasn't just a silhouette. It was a shadow, a distorted form, shifting and flickering in the fog like a shadow cast by something inhuman. It was as if the very air around me had bent to accommodate its presence, warping reality. I couldn't move. I stood frozen, heart hammering in my chest, every muscle screaming for me to run, but my body refused to obey. I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. It wasn't a person. It wasn't even a creature. It was something else entirely, something that didn't belong in this world. And it was staring directly at me, its empty, soulless eyes piercing through the mist, locking onto me with an intensity that froze me to the spot. It felt as though it knew me, like it had been watching me for far longer than I realized. I stumbled backward, my mind screaming for me to turn and run, but I couldn't. I was trapped. The fog had become my prison, and the figure, my warden. I had no way out. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, and in its place, the silence returned as though nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. My feet moved instinctively, driven by an overpowering need to escape, to find my way back to the trail. Every corner of the forest looked the same, every tree, every rock, nothing familiar. My pulse raced, my breath ragged as I pushed forward, hoping for some sign of the path I had once known. And then, just as I thought I was losing my mind, I saw it. The trail. A familiar marker, just a faint outline in the fog, but enough to pull me back to reality. I took one last desperate step toward it, as if the very act of touching it would restore me to the world I once knew. But even as I stood there, finally back on the trail, something deep within me knew that it wasn't over. That figure, the one in the fog, was still out there, watching, waiting. The Appalachian Trail is known for its beauty, its peace, its serenity. But in those hours, lost in the fog, I learned there's something darker here, something ancient. And whatever that figure was, it's still out there, lurking in the mist. I don't know if I'll ever go back. But if you find yourself on that trail, walking alone in the early hours of the morning, listen carefully. You might hear the same scream I did or see a figure standing motionless in the fog, waiting to make its presence known. Because once it sees you, it doesn't let go. And trust me, you don't want to meet it. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave, and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 3. The Unseen Presence in the Woods. I was a firefighter, used to handling the most chaotic situations, yet nothing in my life had prepared me for the events I encountered on that hike. It wasn't just the fear of the unknown. It was the feeling that something was watching, waiting, something unseen, something that was always one step ahead, just out of sight. I had always been drawn to the Appalachian Trail, the vastness, the isolation, but that day, it changed me. I had heard the stories before, the ones that speak of the trail's darker side, but like any rational person, I dismissed them. Until now. It was a morning like any other, the fog thicker than usual, swirling around me as I hiked alone through the dense woods. The trees whispered in the wind, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The air was damp, thick with moisture, and it clung to my skin like a second layer. I thought about turning back, but something pulled me forward. Maybe it was the adrenaline I was used to, the rush that comes with a challenge. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that the trail had other plans. As I continued my journey, the sounds of the forest began to fade. The usual bird song, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, everything fell silent. I was used to silence in the woods, but this felt different. This silence was heavy, oppressive. That's when I heard it, The scream. A blood-curdling cry, human but unmistakably distorted, as if it came from a deep hidden place within the earth. It was like no scream I'd ever heard before, raw, desperate, and filled with an unnatural urgency. I froze. The fog swirled around me, thickening, closing in. My heart started pounding, my breath shallow. It's just an animal, I tried to reassure myself, but deep down I knew it wasn't. It wasn't just the sound that disturbed me, it was the silence that followed. No other sounds, no movement, just the silence of the woods, as if everything was holding its breath. Compelled by a mixture of dread and curiosity, I veered off the trail, drawn to the direction of the scream. The fog seemed to move with me, thick and heavy, disorienting me. I couldn't see anything clearly, just shadows shifting through the mist. I called out, hoping for a response, but all I received was the echo of my own voice. My mind began to race, my thoughts fraying at the edges. Could it have been a person, a hiker in trouble, or was it something else, something unseen? I pushed forward, the fog pressing in, until the rustling began. A faint sound, soft at first, then louder. Footsteps? Number. It was too erratic, too unnatural. The crackling of leaves, the scraping of something large moving through the underbrush. My pulse quickened, and I stumbled over roots, trying to steady myself, and then I saw it, a figure standing motionless in the mist. It was the same shape I had seen before, earlier in my hike, but this time it was clearer. I could almost make out the outline of a face, but it was wrong, distorted, like it was trying to become something else, something that wasn't meant to exist. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It was as if it was waiting for me to approach. But I didn't. Something inside me screamed, "Run! Get away!" But before I could even take a step, the figure vanished. No sound, no movement. It simply evaporated into the mist, like it had never been there at all. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, my body trembling. Was I seeing things? Was it the fog playing tricks on my mind? I couldn't tell. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog, both in the air and in my mind. That's when I heard the second scream, louder now, closer. It was the same agonizing cry, but now it felt like it was right behind me. I spun around, but the woods were still, unnervingly so. I turned back to the path I had come from, hoping to find my way back to safety. But the trail, which had been so clear before, was now obscured, hidden by the dense fog. The more I tried to find my bearings, the more disoriented I became. I had been on this trail for hours, but it felt like I was going in circles. The world around me had become a twisted maze of shadows and fog. Then again I saw it, the same figure. This time it was standing further down the path, staring at me with hollow, empty eyes. Its form flickered in and out of existence, like it was unsure if it was even real. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I couldn't move. The air grew colder, sharper, and the mist seemed to close in tighter around me. Was it real? Was I going mad? Was this some sort of hallucination brought on by isolation, by the fear that gnawed at me from the inside? Or was something truly out there, lurking just beyond the veil of the visible world? I didn't know. I only knew one thing. Whatever this was, it didn't belong in this world. The figure vanished again, but I could still feel its presence like a shadow clinging to my every step. Panic rose within me as I stumbled forward, my heart racing, breath coming in ragged gasps. I had to get out of there, back to the safety of civilization, back to the familiar, back to something that made sense. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I found the trail again. But even as I stepped back onto it, the oppressive feeling remained. The fog began to dissipate, but the unease, the feeling of being watched, stayed with me. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figure once more, but there was nothing but the dark, silent woods stretching endlessly ahead. As I made my way back to the trailhead, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, just beyond the trees, waiting for me to look back. I didn't dare turn around. I kept my eyes fixed on the path ahead, my every step quickening as I tried to outrun the feeling of dread that clung to me like a second skin. But even now, when I lie in bed at night, I can still feel it. That presence. I can hear the rustling of the leaves, the echo of the scream. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think I hear footsteps behind me. But when I turn to look, there's nothing there. It's always waiting, always watching, and I can never escape it. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC The Place of the Brave and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 4. The Disembodied Footsteps and Foggy Disappearance, a Creepypasta Horror. It was supposed to be a simple hike, a quiet, solitary escape from the chaos of everyday life. But I quickly learned that the Appalachian Trail has a way of luring people into its depths, and once you're in, it's not so easy to leave. The day started like any other. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that nips at your skin but doesn't freeze you. A perfect day for a hike. I set off alone, my boots crunching on the soft ground as I ventured deeper into the thick woods, the towering trees above casting long, dark shadows on the trail. I had heard plenty of stories about the Appalachian Trail, how hikers sometimes go missing, how the dense fog can swallow you whole, how the wilderness can get into your mind. But those were just stories, right? Tales meant to frighten children around campfires. As I pushed on, I soon realized something was wrong. The fog rolled in fast, thick and heavy, like a living thing. The path before me became an indistinguishable blur, and even the trees surrounding me seemed to fade into the mist. My heart began to pound, but I dismissed it. I was just letting my imagination get the best of me. Then I heard it, a rustling sound in the fog. At first it was faint, like the rustling of leaves or branches disturbed by a breeze. But then it grew louder, closer. The sound moved in a circle around me, making my breath hitch in my throat. I stopped, straining to hear, and the noise stopped too. I waited, my eyes darting in every direction. Nothing, no movement, only the heavy silence of the forest closing in around me. "Hello?" I called, my voice feeling small in the vast emptiness. There was no answer. I shook my head, trying to shake off the growing sense of unease. It was probably just an animal, I thought, a deer or a fox. But why did it stop when I called out? Why did it feel like it was watching me? I continued walking, my steps becoming quicker, trying to push the thought out of my mind, but the further I went, the worse it got. The fog thickened, pressing in on me, making it hard to breathe. Every step I took felt heavier, like the ground itself was pulling at me. And then, again, I heard the footsteps. This time they were louder, closer. They echoed in the stillness of the forest, but there was no one there. I could feel my pulse quicken. Someone, or something, was following me. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. The footsteps circled me again, never stopping, like a predator toying with its prey. I called out once more, my voice shaky. "Who's there?" And again, the footsteps stopped. My heart was racing now, my body shaking with fear. I tried to force myself to move, to take another step, but I couldn't. It felt as though I was being pulled into the fog, into the very core of the forest, where nothing could hear me, nothing could save me. And then I heard it, a scream, a sound so guttural, so full of raw terror, that it sent chills down my spine. It wasn't far off, not this time. It was so close, it felt like it was coming from just behind me. I spun around, but all I saw was mist. Panic surged through me. My breath quickened, my legs shaking, but somehow I managed to move. I stumbled forward, trying to get out of the fog, trying to find the trail again, but the forest seemed to have changed. The trees were different. The ground felt unfamiliar beneath my feet. Had I wandered off the path? Was I lost? Then, through the fog, I saw it. A figure, a shadow, tall and dark, standing motionless among the trees. My blood ran cold as I stared at it, paralyzed. It had no face, just a vague, indistinct form that seemed to sway in the mist like a phantom. I couldn't make out any details, but I knew it was something, someone, watching me. I took a step back, my throat dry, my heart pounding in my ears. But the figure didn't move. It didn't approach me. It just stood there, unmoving, as if it were waiting for something. And then, just like that, it vanished. The fog seemed to swallow it whole, and with it, the oppressive weight that had settled on my chest. For a moment, I thought I might have imagined it. The stress, the fear, the isolation, all of it was beginning to blur together. But the unease in my gut told me otherwise. I took a deep breath and continued forward, desperate to get out of the fog, to return to the safety of solid ground. The mist began to lift slowly, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that something was still with me, lurking just out of sight. Then I heard it again, the footsteps. They were louder now, closer than ever before. They echoed in my ears like a warning, and I knew it was still out there, watching, waiting. I pushed myself harder, trying to ignore the panic rising in my chest. The trail had to be close. I couldn't be far now. I kept walking, my eyes scanning every inch of the fog, searching for the path. And then, in the distance, I saw it, the faint outline of the trail. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. Something in my gut told me that just because I found the trail didn't mean I was safe. I turned around one last time, half expecting to see the figure looming just behind me, but there was nothing. Just the empty fog. I didn't feel safe until I was miles away from where I'd started. I didn't look back again, but even now, every time the fog rolls in, whether in the mountains or the city, I feel the weight of its presence, the footsteps, the scream, the shadow that waited for me in the mist. I don't know what it was that I encountered that day. Some part of me wants to believe it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but another part, the part that still feels those footsteps on my heels, knows better. And that's what haunts me the most. What if it's still out there, following me, waiting for the next time I step into the fog? As the darkness deepens and the stories grow more unsettling, we venture deeper into the unknown together. Each chilling tale brings us closer to the eerie truths lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The terror doesn't stop here. It only gets worse. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave now, and stay on the edge of your seat. You won't want to miss what's lurking in the shadows next. Hit that notification bell and prepare for the next terrifying chapter. Remember, in the world of DTC, the Place of the Brave are always waiting, and they never rest. Good luck sleeping tonight. Good luck.